Socrates is probably the most well-known philosopher worldwide, which is in part due to the numerous pop culture references about him over the years.
Socrates' philosophies and hypotheses can't define how I be dropping these mockeries.
And his famous quote stating that the only true wisdom is in knowing that you know nothing. Despite the name Socrates being so recognizable, most people actually don't know anything at all about his philosophies. So hopefully by making this animated video, I can help change this unfortunate reality. And I do mean unfortunate because upon doing my research, I found many of his philosophies to be of the utmost importance universally, especially the topic we will be discussing today. As you noticed by the title, Socrates didn't quite believe in the notion of true evil, or the modern way that we use the word per se. Rather, he believed that the phenomenon was really just a particularly pernicious form of ignorance. In addition to discussing the topic of evil and morality, I will also delve into some information about Socrates' life, which I'm sure you'll find very interesting. But before that, don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos and to help my channel grow. So without further ado, let's get into it. Socrates was born and lived his life in the city-state of Athens. He was the son of a stonemason by the name of Socrates and a midwife by the name of Phanerete. Since he wasn't born into a noble family, he probably received a basic Greek education and picked up his father's trade of stonemasonry. Many believe this is how he supported his career as a philosopher. As an adult, Socrates was married to a younger woman by the name of Xanthippe, who bore him 3 children. It is said that his relationship with his family might have been strained due to his chosen path in life. By his own words, Socrates had little to do with his son's upbringing and expressed far more interest in the intellectual development of the young boys of Athens. An interesting thing to note is that Athens required all able-bodied men from age 18 to 60 to serve in the military on call. As a result of this, Socrates served in the armored infantry division known as the hoplite, with a shield, long spear, and face mask. He participated in 3 military campaigns during the Peloponnesian War at Delenium, Amphipolis, and Podidae, where he saved the life of Alcibiades, a popular Athenian general. Socrates was known for his courage in battle and fearlessness, a trait that stayed with him throughout his life, which also contributed to his respect among the Athenian populace. Socrates believed that philosophy should achieve practical results for the greater well-being of society, and he attempted to establish an ethical system based on human reason rather than theological doctrine. He also pointed out that human choice was motivated by the desire for happiness, and that ultimate wisdom comes from knowing oneself. The more a person knows about themselves, the greater his or her ability to reason and make choices that will bring about true happiness in one's life. It's because of this belief that Socrates treated his city as if it was a classroom and went about asking questions of the elite and common man alike, seeking to arrive at political and ethical truths. It's important to note that Socrates never actually wrote anything down. Everything that we know about the man and his philosophies are from the dialogues of his students Xenophon, Acristhenes, and Plato. By reading these ancient dialogues, we are able to gain insight into the mind of Socrates and the philosophies that he discussed throughout his life. One being the controversial topic of true evil. The modern use of the term evil is heavily influenced by the Judeo-Christian tradition, which makes up much of the foundation of Western culture. In Christian thought, evil is a term with cosmological contexts that are used to explain the existence of human wrongdoing. This style of explaining human evil in the tradition of Abrahamic religions is connected to concepts of sin, rebellion against God, and the fall of humanity from divine paradise. In the Socratic perspective, evil is a term simply used as a synonym to describe wrongdoings of all kind. Harmfulness is the only evaluative criterion used for assessing the evil. If a behavior is not harmful at all, then there is no basis of defining the evil of that behavior. Also, the recognition of human evil is usually misunderstood in the minds of most people. Human evil is usually measured in terms of the intensity of the destructive result without regard to understanding its nature. The nature of evil is something that must be discussed if we are able to figure out why it exists in the hearts of mankind. A particular behavior might be harmful in some circumstances, but not others. Furthermore, a particular harmful result might indicate great evil in one person, but might just be a one-time fluke. However, Socrates believed that ignorance and fear are always at the origin of wrongdoing. That brings up the question: if something that we consider to be evil is really just fear and ignorance, then can we rightfully think of it as true evil? What do you think? Let's continue the conversation by discussing morality, self-interest, and its relation to wrongdoings. The term morality refers to our adherence to rules that govern human behavior on the basis of right or wrong. Whatever your concept of morality, it must address our capacity to decide between right and wrong and then act accordingly. Socrates believed that nobody chooses to do wrong because doing wrong always harms the wrongdoer, and nobody seeks to harm themselves due to our natural instinct for self-interest. Since nobody consciously wants to harm their own well-being, then it can be reasoned that all wrongdoing must be derived from ignorance. It is true that people willingly do wrong/harmful acts consciously, but it's not true that people willingly do things that they perceive to be harmful to themselves, and that's an important distinction. It's like a person who cuts themselves. They are objectively harming themselves, but they do it regardless due to the psychological relief that they report to receive as a result of doing such an act. In their own intuitive calculus of personal benefit, they have decided that the damage inflicted by the act of cutting themselves is better than a state of unrelieved stress. Socrates believed that people who seek what they understand to benefit them are not trying to do wrong. They do not act for the sake of the wrong, but for the sake of obtaining the perceived good which they are trying to help themselves. Regardless of how ridiculous the methods may seem to other people, it is in our nature to see what we perceive to benefit us as being good and right, and it's also in our nature to see which harms us as being bad and wrong. This is what we would call natural morality. Even when one makes the ultimate sacrifice of choosing to give up their own life, self-interest is still expressed in the act when the one who chooses has a purpose in mind. Our natural obsession with benefiting ourselves brings up the relationship between self-interest and morality. Deciding that a particular behavior is morally wrong in a particular circumstance is a value that can only be imposed by a self-interested being. A non-self-interested being is incapable of conceiving of right and wrong in any moral sense. There is no such thing as morally right or wrong until there first exists self-aware self-interest. What we consider to be right is only deemed right because of the context that it appeals to the self-interest of ourselves or of others. The same can be said in the case of what we consider to be wrong or bad. Now, there does exist people that can commit horrible actions with no sensible benefit, but in such circumstances, either the benefit of the action is only perceivable to such person's own distorted inner sense of well-being, or such persons are aware of acting out of uncontrollable compulsion. In the latter case, they are rendered unable to make real choices and are thus removed from the realm of morality altogether. To the extent that we are unable to choose, we are unable to be moral. Furthermore, the instinct for self-interest may assert itself in the minds that are ignorant, confused, twisted, broken, and utterly unable to know what is truly good, and this is a separate issue that does not negate the fundamental truths of Socrates' insight that people never willingly harm themselves. Actions based on ignorance still has the motive of benefiting the actor, but lacks the knowledge to make good of that motive. Socrates is pretty much saying that those who are philosophically ignorant are more likely to make bad moral decisions due to their lack of ability to override their natural feelings regarding certain situations. To continue this conversation even further, we must address the presupposition that underlies the whole argument, which is that committing acts of evil does harm to the character. In order to define harm to character, we have to identify a decrease in functioning of the human character. According to Socrates, we can identify a decrease in functionality when lapses of character cause us to be less useful or skillful, either in cooperative group efforts or in our own private living. The functioning of our working and living relationships with other human beings is a fundamental issue in morality because in the absence of any obligation to other humans, animals, environments, etc., morality becomes undefinable except in terms of self-care. This is why isolationism is so commonly the precursor to acts of evil. To expound on this point, the strength and well-being of a society is largely determined by the capacity of its individual members to work cooperatively together towards common goals such as safety and well-being. The most significant disruption of this strength is related to the integrity of the human character with regard to how we relate to and work with one another. Part of Socrates' goal was to learn what it meant to live as a just and virtuous citizen. This was of the utmost importance to Socrates because he knew that the good character of the individuals contributed directly to the survival and well-being of his whole society. When the learning and thinking habits of people begin to lack, that is, when the masses do not live examined life, democracy becomes a fast road to tyranny. When the justice and skillful virtue of the human character of individual citizens is harmed, society is also harmed. The relationship between character and functionality is easy to see. When a group's goals depend on accurate information, lying causes a decrease in needed functionality and reduces the group's chances of achieving their goals. When understanding one another is necessary to function together, poor character weakens our skill at interpreting other human beings. When accuracy with regard to fulfilling plans is a matter of life and death to the group's achievement of the goal, people who say what they mean and do what they say optimize the group's functionality. The quality of human character manifests visible and measurable results in the group's functioning of our daily living. The greater the effective functioning of our group relationships, which depend on the skillful human character of its members, the better our chances of thriving well. When a group's cooperative efforts suffer under lack of accurate information, unjust resource distribution, a serious impaired mutual understanding of one another, and the unreliability of word and deed, that group's ability to thrive is harmed. In harming the group's chances of success, we often harm our own individual chances. Nobody wants to let a brain surgeon who cheated in medical school and is lazy about their work to operate on them. Nobody wants you to do anything in your social and work-related functions with anything less than the full integrity of your character. The virtue of a human character is not just a motif in mythic tales about gods and devils. It is a practical reality of daily life that is exercised every time we work and relate to one another. With that being said, let's delve into Socrates' remedy to all of this, which is knowledge to virtue. Human character is the foundation of competence in all cooperative efforts. For Socrates, knowledge is the foundation of a skillful and healthy human character. The key to the relationship between knowledge and character is the ability of a person to submit their willful living to the influence of knowledge. The subordination of the will to knowledge is the primary outcome Socrates sought in the examined life. When the human will is able to allow itself to be influenced by knowledge, this is a manifestation of a basic virtue of human character that we all need to live well. A broken character is no different from a broken leg in terms of giving rise to a reduce in functionality. When your leg is harmed, you limp. The same goes for when your broken character diminishes the cooperative skill of society. The cooperative group, family, work, etc. limps to that extent. Such limping of society will eventually tread upon the well-being of those who cause the limping. This is always true to the extent that we survive and thrive better as a group than as an isolationist hermit. When we are alone, we must be disciplined in learning, persistent in developing our skills, and faithful to improving our character in order to work towards a life worth living. Even for the hermit, Mother Nature teaches her that human character will bless her or kill her. The lazy and ignorant do not survive alone in the wild. Heraclitus said that character is destiny. The persistent effort to develop skillful and upright character is the most important willful act that any individual can perform to make their destiny something worth living. If we can all agree that harm to character is real harm, then nobody wants bad character. Therefore, if what we see as evil is the result of ignorance, then the remedy is the cessation of ignorance, which is the pursuit of knowledge. Knowledge gives us the ability to transcend the boundaries of our natural morality and to see the bigger picture for what it is. And this belief was the theme that is alluded to throughout much of Socrates' philosophy, which makes lots of sense given the time of history in which he was alive to witness. During Socrates' life, Athens was going through a dramatic transition from hegemony in the classic world to its decline after a humiliating defeat by Sparta in the Peloponnesian War. Athenians entered a period of instability and doubt about their identity and place in the world. As a result of this, they clung to past glories, notions of wealth, and a fixation with physical beauty. Socrates attacked these values with his insistent emphasis on the greater importance of the mind. While many Athenians admired Socrates' challenge to Greek conventional wisdom and the humorous way he went about it, an equal number grew angry and felt that he threatened their way of life and uncertain future. As a result of this, the man was brought into court to face supposed crimes of corrupting the youth and was forced to defend himself from such erroneous accusations. The jury was not swayed by Socrates' defense and convicted him by a vote of 280 to 221. Possibly the defiant tone of his defense contributed to the verdict, and he made things worse during the deliberation over his punishment. Athenian law allowed a convicted citizen to propose an alternative punishment to the one called for by the prosecution, and the jury would decide. Instead of proposing to be exiled, Socrates suggested that he should be honored by the city for his contribution to their enlightenment and be paid for his services. The jury was not amused and sentenced him to death by drinking a mixture of poisoned hemlock. Before Socrates' execution, friends offered to bribe the guards and rescue him so that he could flee into exile. But he declined, stating that he wasn't afraid of death, and felt that he was no better off in exile, and said that he was still a loyal citizen of Athens, willing to abide by its laws, even the ones that condemned him to death. Plato described Socrates' execution in his fatal dialogue. Quote, "Socrates drank the hemlock mixture without hesitation. Numbness slowly crept into his body until it reached his heart. Shortly before his final breath, Socrates described his death as a release of the soul from the body. Although Socrates died in the physical sense, his soul lived on through his teachings and went on to nurture the minds of many generations to come." But my friends, that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it and added the knowledge to your own philosophical lexicon. I'll catch you on the next one, and please don't forget to like and subscribe.